Dee-ba-dee-dee-ba-dee-dee. Yay! Hi, chess kids! It's endgame time. Today we're going to learn the 5 pawn endgames that every chess kid must know. You're a chess kid. You're about to know these. Yay! Here's the first one. This one is really fundamental. All of them are pretty important in chess. This one's really fundamental to how chess works. It answers the question, can you win a game if you have an advantage of one pawn? Now, a pawn can't checkmate. It's pretty weak. So if you're going to be able to win a game with an extra pawn, or almost any endgame with an extra 1 or 2 pawns, or any endgame really, you're usually going to have to queen your pawn at the end of the game. And this position here answers that question of can you queen it? The answer is, it's a Zugzwang. It's a situation where if one person has to move, the other person will be able to make progress. Neither player wants to move here. First, let's imagine that it's black's move. Their king's on the perfect square where it blocks this pawn and defends the squares that the white king might want to use to come and help the pawn advance further. Right now, the white king couldn't come to f7 to help the pawn up the board. It's illegal. He's on the perfect square. Unfortunately, he's got to move. When he moves, where's he going to end up going? Well, he can't go there, can't go there, can't go there, can't take the pawn. So that forces him to go to f7. This is a much worse square than the one he started on. The white king comes up to d7. Next move, white gets a queen and goes on to win the game. So let's take that back. Let's say it's white's move here. If it's white's move, oh no, this black king is right where we don't want him to be. He's keeping me from moving up. He's attacking my pawn. I can't move the pawn. If I move my king to almost any square, I'm going to lose the pawn. So let's give us back our pawn. Please give us back our pawn. Thank you. Let's say we want to move our king somewhere that keeps the pawn defended. Well, the only choice is really to go here. And when we go here, a strange situation arises. It's called stalemate. The black king has nowhere to go. Legally, he can't go anywhere without getting captured by the pawn or the king. But since right now he's not attacked, it's not checkmate and he doesn't lose. It's stalemate. It's a draw. So this position here that we see at the beginning, this is what's called a mutual Zugzwang. If white has to move, he doesn't want to, and he draws the game. If black has to move, he doesn't want to, and he loses the game. Here, the white king is doing something really helpful. He's standing in front of his pawn instead of behind it. This gives him much better chances to help the pawn up the board by staying in front of the pawn and controlling the squares. Right now, our king controls e6 and e7. Is that enough to get a queen? Close, but that's not going to do it in chess. Close does not do it in chess. If he wants to win, he's going to have to get control of this square for his pawn. Now, let's imagine first that it is white's move here. All right, I'll play my king to the side. The opponent's king's best move is going to be to follow me and control all the squares that I would use to get forward and control the queening square for my pawn. Now I advance my pawn. The king moves here. I advance my pawn. Do you recognize this position? Have we seen this at some point in our lives? What's the result here, kids? You're like, whose move is it? Good question. It's black's move. We just played e7. So black has to step out of the way. We come here and we win. Yay! But now let's go back to the starting position and let's make it black's move. If it's black's move, it's almost worse, although losing is losing. But if it's black's move, he has to step out of the way of the white king. And then we're going to see a very important technique, which is flanking, going around the side of your opponent. After you have controlled the opposition and forced him into a Zugzwang where he has to step out of your way, you can now go around. Now your king is controlling e8, e7, e6. It's almost like he's rolling out a red carpet for the pawn. And that should be an easy new queen and win for white. Should we just put the queen on the board once to feel that satisfaction of winning? I think we should. So going back to this position here it's interesting. It turns out that whether it's white's move or black's move, either way, white is able to win a position with the king in front of the pawn on the 6th rank. Next position. We got 5 to learn today, right? That's 2 down, 3 to go, if I'm counting correctly. You guys all know 5 minus 2? Probably, if you know how to win with a king and pawn. This one here, the white king is in front of the pawn, but he's not on the 6th rank. Okay, so it's not as easy. However, even if it's white's move, he has a very, very important resource to allow him to win the game, which is an extra move he can waste with the pawn. If we waste this move with the pawn, then we gain control of the opposition, versus if we step out of the way of the opponent and they keep blocking us and we keep getting blocked, and then at some point we move this pawn forward, this position here is a draw. Okay, so very useful for us that we're able to waste a move with our pawn at some point, switch who controls the opposition to the opponent, make black step out of the way, and then we start doing what? Flanking! We go around to this side. He comes back to block us. If he doesn't come back to block us, we're basically threatening to just keep marching down and controlling these squares. Of course, keeping our pawn within arm's reach. You know, if the king comes here, you don't want to just happily rush towards e8 and leave the pawn alone to die, right? If the king comes here, you're going to want to play check, keeping the pawn somewhat near your king. And then if they come back here controlling these squares, you just keep walking up here. Okay? So let's go back to this. We go king d5 flanking him. Oh, sorry. We go king d5. Let's have him block us this time. Now we'll take control of the opposition again. Dun-dun-dun. Force him to the side again. He can choose his side, but he can't choose to save the game. Now if he comes up this way, don't keep going too far. The black king will be able to scoop up the pawn. Keep the pawn sort of near you. Right? Keep it coming. And then when he comes back to try and block you, take the opposition, flank him, bing, bang, boom. You win the game again. Whoa. Now your opponent's got a pawn. That's not fair. I thought I was just going to win every position easily, playful. Well, not that easy. Chess is not supposed to be easy. But if you apply yourself and study and practice all these positions, eventually positions like this do become easy. And then there's always new interesting positions that aren't easy, and you're actually glad for it because your brain likes to think about stuff that's tricky to it, right? Yeah? All right, so let's think about this one here. This one, it again matters whose move it is. First, let's say it's white's move. Then black is controlling the opposition on us. Do we have any moves to waste? That should be like the first thing you look for. You're like, oh, he's got the opposition on me. Can I like move my pawn from e4 to e5? Or do I have an extra pawn back on e2 that I can just waste a move with? No, we don't. So if black's controlling the opposition, we actually don't have a way to get past this king to win this pawn. He can always block us. Wherever we go, control all the squares in front of us, like in the one king endgame that you need to know. And if you don't know the one king endgame you need to know, what are you doing here in the 5 pawn endgames you need to know? These are too hard. You need to know about the kings first. So go back and learn about the kings. All right. This is a draw. We're not making any progress. You can walk around to the other side of this, and it's going to be the same thing. Don't believe me? I'll show you. Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. Bum. Uh-oh. You again? Could I please come around you? Don't think so. We are not going to win this on any side, right? Back to the drawing board. There's no way for us to get our king into the 6th rank and win this pawn if it's our move here. Black controls the opposition. It's a draw. Now let's make it black's turn. Yay, I love when it's your turn. Not in the opening or the middle game, but in the end game, sure. Now black's going to have to step aside because we control the opposition. Again, black's looking around like, isn't there somewhere that I could move something that doesn't ruin my position? No, move your king. All right, if he comes this way, we come here, we get this pawn. If he comes here, we walk around him. Force our way in. He keeps having to give room to us, right? He tries to defend this pawn. We keep coming here. Eventually, he's in Zugzwang. We control this. His king can't stay on the pawn. It backs up. We take this pawn. Does this position look familiar to anybody? I feel like we've had this one too recently, right? With the king on the 6th rank in front of our pawn, we win again. So remember that. With our king on the 6th rank in front of our pawn, we win again. Easy peasy. Whoa, this one's tricky. Here's what you need to know about this position. We're not going to play it out. What you need to know is that if you've got one passed pawn way over here, and there are also pawns on the other side of the board, You can win the game by letting your opponent's king run over to take this pawn while you run over here and take lots of pawns. Your king's just going to be bathing in enemy pawns, all right? So if you had this position here, it doesn't really matter whose move it is, but basically you're going to do something like this. He's going to run for it. Don't go defend that pawn. It can't become a queen. It's just a decoy. You come here, he catches that pawn. You come in here, he takes this. You come over here, you're miles ahead of him, right? Can these pawns get away from you? No. Look, caught ya. I'll defend you. No, you won't. And is the king going to get over in time? No. He might be able to get one pawn at the end. Like if he were a little bit faster, if he didn't waste time trying to save his pawns. But even if he got one or two of these pawns, which he can't here, right? We could save them all. But even if he got one or two of them, one is all we need when it's going to be a queen. And that's how you win king and pawn endings. All right, so just to review, the key strategy here I want you to know about is if you've got a really far away passed pawn on the side of the board, you can almost always win by letting the opponent's king go deal with it while you go deal with the other side of the board. Even if your opponent had 3 pawns against 2 or 2 pawns against 1 or 4 pawns against 3, often you can win by letting him run off this way while your king heads to the fiesta. All right, everybody, I hope you enjoyed that video. Go on to ChessKid.com, find yourself some computer workouts and practice some of these king and pawn endgames. A lot of these endgames are right there in the workouts, so you can try these out again and again against a really strong beep bop boop boop computer and see if you've really understood how to win these positions. Until next time, I'm Playful Squirrel, signing